Yeah, welcome into the Friday edition of Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Friday morning. Hope everybody is doing well. Joe Rexrode, good morning. How are you? How are we doing with cabin fever today?
Yeah, doing okay. I would tell people this would be a good day to stay inside because we got the rain last night and then it becomes ice right now. So I'm sure I'm not like the first person to come up with this idea, but today would be probably a good day to avoid the roads, which by the way is Keezer, you all right, man?
Yeah, I'm okay. I made it here all week and no problems whatsoever. First few days, certainly rough. But if you don't have to go out, I second what Joe says. Please stay at the house, no matter how feverish you may feel at the moment. We'll get through this in a few days. So, yeah.
It, right. Did you sense any difference with the roads today because of the rain, then it freezes over?
To be honest, not as much as I thought I would. I went out last
Okay.
night and looked at my car and was expecting there to be a lot of ice, but there wasn't. I've got something for my windshield to cover it, but the roads are pretty much the same to me, at least, as they were when I got home yesterday. So I guess it wasn't really as bad with the rain yesterday from where I live. I don't know. So
I couldn't tell you. All I know is I look outside my window and it looks like there's just like a fresh sheet of glass out there, ice.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe I'll go try to throw some sauce passes out there hockey style later, Nick. What do you think about that?
yeah, I'll come out there with you. That'd be a lot of fun. There's only one instance in my life where I skated in the woods when I was about 13 years old. A friend of mine that lives on a farm, he said that there was a pond that froze over. This was Snowmageddon, is what the kids called it when I was in school. And we were out for over a week, and I actually skated on a pond one time in Tennessee, and I'd love to do it again.
Apparently, Dirks Bentley put out a video, I guess it was either
I
yesterday or
saw.
the day before, of like this community pond hockey game in his neighborhood. Where it looked like it was in Brentwood, Franklin, somewhere, wherever he lives. Nice community pond hockey game. Look cool, Joe. Little pond hockey in the Nashville area.
Man, I wouldn't trust that. But good, that's cool. I have I have a break through the ice thing. Maybe that's why I never ice skated, even though you
Could
can of
be.
course do it inside. But I think it sounds cool. I mean, pond hockey as an idea, I've always liked.
We got a lot to get to on the program today. Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com will join us in the 8 o'clock hour. We'll get his thoughts on all things Titans leading into what could be an interesting weekend on the Titans front. Jared Stillman will be with us at 7 o'clock. So we'll get his thoughts on the Titans as well and his thoughts on two consecutive victories in Jared versus Joe, which I know Joe is very proud of. Way to go, Jared, for crawling your way back in the competition after it felt like Joe had won about 12 in a row.
Yeah, someone tweeted yesterday, like, gosh, I listened to the podcast. I listened to Joe assault Jared for a half hour, and then somehow Caroline gave Jared the win. I favorited it.
I'm sure you did. The Nashville Predators get a 2-1 win last night against the LA Kings. Goals by Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist. So chalk another one up for Joe Rexrode in the Preds Pick to Click competition, which, as
Thank
we
you.
know, is the most important part of this discussion. But that's a heck of a win for the Predators. So you lose to Vegas on Monday. You have a few days off. You go to LA, and LA has been struggling a little bit lately. David Riddick is in that. Big save, Dave, which I just thought he played pretty well last night, and he's been pretty good for the most part since he's been in there for LA. But the Predators clamped down defensively. I thought, the forecheck improved as the game went along. They had, there were some penalties in the game that I think were questionable, to say the least, on both sides. But they end up getting the 2-1 win. That's a big win for them last night, Joe. And they'll have Arizona coming up on Saturday. And by the way, with that win last night, the Predators hand LA another regulation loss, and that means the Edmonton Oilers have gone all the way from pretty significantly out of the playoffs to now they've jumped LA and are third in the Pacific Division with their win yesterday too.
Yeah, they're going to be in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, they very well might.
But that's a very good win for the Preds. That's kind of the formula. Like top line looks like it's looked most of the year. Yossi, but I guess I see a lot of chatter about Yossi out there. Thanks to our buddy who's coming on the show. later today.
Yes.
So he's doing his thing. And then of course Saros, 33 saves. He needed that. And it's not like, that's the thing. It's like, I mean, he's had a lot of really good games this year. It's just obviously the overall, there's just way more bad ones than we're used to. But I mean, I feel like we've talked about it this week, and I think it's not gonna go away. And I have wondered a little bit, like, is just understanding the situation, is that affecting him at all? I mean, that's human nature that it might. So amid all this, which again, I don't think it's gonna go away. Amid all that, and then amid all the talk of how he struggled, and amid the struggles, that's a big deal to me for him to have a game like that.
Yeah, a big deal for him to have a game like that. I would assume that he's probably going to be back in there on Saturday as well, given the rest that they've had this week. So we'll see what that looks like. I mean, Lankinen's played well too, so you've got the option if you want to do that if you're Andrew Burnett on Saturday. But I mean, with that win last night, and then you've got Seattle losing to Edmonton last night as well. I mean, it was actually a pretty good night from the standpoint, if you're a Predators fan, things worked out pretty well for you. The Flames lost in regulation, the Blues lost in regulation, the Wild lost in regulation, and obviously the Kraken lost in regulation as well, as did the Coyotes. So literally, like, every team that is right behind you in the standings that we talked about you having to hold off yesterday, all of them lost. So that's a pretty good night for the Predators for you to pick up 2 points, and then everybody else around you that you're battling with to lose.
Yeah, and just this stretch, as we've talked about, really tough one. The rando coming back home and going back out, coming up here, but
that's still wild to me.
Yeah, it really is weird. But
hey guys, go to Dallas and then come on back home, and then head on out to Vegas.
Right, and then it's like Arizona, then back for Florida, and then back out for 3 more. So
yeah,
just these little, it's like a relay race. But any regulation wins you can get on this trip, big deal. And so that's again, we knew Nyquist would score, or I'm sorry, not Nyquist. We knew O'Reilly would score when I picked him yesterday.
We did.
But for that line to continue to keep trucking, and what is that? 6 assists for Yossi. I'm looking at Willie's tweet. 6 assists in the last 4 games for Yossi. So he's not bleep or whatever Jared said.
He's not. No question about that. On the Titans,
straight up bleep. Did he say straight up bleep?
He did.
Oh, God, Jared.
Probably not.
On the Titans front, Joe, they completed an interview with Thomas Brown for their head coaching position, Panthers offensive coordinator, yesterday. And then last night, it was announced that they completed an interview, what I would assume was a virtual interview, with Bobby Slowick for their head coaching position as well of the Houston Texans, to which the Bobby Slowick one, Titans fans were like, woo, yay, Bobby Slowick. Jared Stillman was going crazy on Instagram and Twitter. He's like, that's my guy. Get Bobby in here. But Bobby Slowick, the interview completed. Nick has just sent us a tweet from Ian Rappaport this morning about Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn will be interview with the Titans and the Atlanta Falcons for their head coaching job as well. So Slowick and Thomas Brown add them to the list yesterday, Joe, of interviews that have been completed by the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, wait a minute. We knew about Glenn. Is this a second interview?
It just says interview. Has he actually done the interview yet? I can't keep up.
Maybe they just requested it. Okay. Yeah. Maybe they just requested it. That's possible. Yeah. Because I mean, this is actually a messed up week. The way they do it. Like, I know, like, Ben Johnson has like 3 interviews today or something like that. And it's like, yeah. Dude, or like he has some today and tomorrow. And it's like, I mean, he does have a kind of a huge playoff game. Remember when Arthur Smith had all his interviews and then the Titans offense sucked against the Ravens? I'm just saying.
We did talk about that. Like the Titans offense had been so good all year long. And then the Ravens game, they really got shut down. And we had a lot of people call in and be like, well, maybe Arthur Smith, instead of being worried about all these head coaching interviews, should actually watch some film. What do you think about that?
I know. I mean, it's, they can't not be a distraction to some extent, right?
For sure.
The weird thing is, too, like, the Titans defense was awesome that day. And, of course, they had been cheeks all year. So I don't know what that means. That was the good old days.
They only really screwed up one play that day, and that was
Yeah,
the Lamar Jackson run. Other than that, they were pretty good.
exactly.
Had
So,
Brooks Reed flying around out there making plays. Titans legend.
wow. Brooks Reed. That's right. They had everybody in the world who you could possibly qualify as an edge that they tried on that defense.
What'd you think
And
of by the way, some more news yesterday. Bill O'Brien, now apparently the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. So what'd you think of that?
yeah, and I saw a lot of Bama fans clowning that move. I
Yeah.
tell you what, man. I don't know. I still think Bill O'Brien's a good coach, but obviously it did not go well in New England. It seemed like he was a real cranky old man yelling at Mac Jones a little bit, you know? So I don't know. He wasn't great at Bama, I guess, but they also didn't have a great situation. Man, I don't know. Ryan Day, man. If he doesn't beat Michigan this year, he's fired, right?
I mean, I think so, but I also thought that last year, and he didn't get fired. So
Yeah, yeah. But this year they're home and Michigan lost half their team, including their quarterback and their coach. So, you know, but
there is that.
it's not. It's people are going to make fun of it. Um, I think he's a good coach. So, I mean, I think he could have done worse than that, but it is kind of weird.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We're off and running. We'll take your thoughts all show long on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Mike Vrabel interviewing with the LA Chargers yesterday. Lots of interesting names that the Chargers are throwing around there. What do we make of the Vrabel part of it? What sort of a fit would that be? We'll take your thoughts on that as well. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Friday morning. Nick Keyser live from our Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Joe Rexrode, Mike Vrabel, completing an interview with the LA Chargers yesterday. So we know that Jim Harbaugh has interviewed with the Chargers. We know that the Chargers have also had some interest in Brian Callahan, who we talked about a lot yesterday on the program for the Titans, who have also had two interviews with Brian Callahan, or are scheduled to have two interviews with Brian Callahan. And now Mike Vrabel with an interview with the LA Chargers, which, I've always thought, and we talked about this, if it wasn't going to be the Patriots, what would be some other good fits for Mike Vrabel? And with the quarterback situation in LA, obviously that's an attractive job out there. So what did you make of the news that Vrabel gets the interview with the Chargers yesterday? And what sort of a fit do you think that would be with Justin Herbert, the LA Chargers, and Mike Vrabel?
Yeah, well, last year, I wrote about Vrabel to Ohio State. I had this dream of Vrabel Harbaugh, just absolute enemies going at it every year.
Yes.
That would have been amazing. So now I guess it's those two for the Chargers job. I do think I have to assume Harbaugh is the favorite for that job.
I would assume.
He's just coming off. He's a very, well, because no one cares about cheating. And he's a very easy sell to the fan base, winning that national championship, especially, and not that, Justin Herbert already is good. You want to take him to the next level, but really you just want to take that team to the next level around him. That is where it's philosophically interesting, because I could also make the case that, not that Harbaugh doesn't check this box, but I could also make the case that there's a lot of talent there, and they really need someone to kind of galvanize them, maybe a little bit of a tougher voice in the room kind of thing. You could look at how they've underachieved and all that. And so you could make a case for Vrabel as the ideal candidate for that. But I think Harbaugh, given his success, and J.J. McCarthy finally demonstrating, quarterback development for him as a college coach, I feel like his momentum is so strong right now. But it's really interesting that they've both been interviewed there. Not too many places have gone with the multiple heavy hitters, although the Falcons are going to interview Vrabel, which is interesting. Here's a scenario that I could see. Now, I don't know if he'd be up for it, but here's a scenario I could see. Harbaugh gets that Chargers job. And by the way, the Seahawks also are going to interview Vrabel. So, I've always thought that was a sneaky, decent possibility for him. But what about Belichick head coach, Vrabel D coordinator with the Falcons?
I don't know. Schefter said yesterday that the Falcons are also interested in speaking with Vrabel. You brought up the Chargers, or excuse me, the Seahawks, like the Belichick Vrabel combo. A lot of people were wondering about that here. Like, if you kept Vrabel, could you hire Belichick as the DC? You could flip that around. Vrabel goes there. Let me ask you this, because I know what my answer would be. If you're Mike Vrabel and you don't get a head coaching job this cycle, are you signing up to be a DC, or are you just going to hang back and get paid by the Titans? Because I know what my answer is.
Yeah, my answer would probably be hang back. It's just one of those things where it's like, some people are like, yeah, you don't want to get out of the cycle too much. You want to stay. And in theory, if you were really successful, you could elevate yourself to have your pick. But I'm with you. I would definitely choose that. First of all, Vrabel's never coached with Belichick, so he's played for him. He never coached with him, so I don't know. That's probably a slightly different experience. And I assume Belichick's kid and his awesome mullet would be kind of running around the sideline too, barking in Vrabel's ear all the time and stuff. Like, you got to think about
sticking his tongue out, all those things. Yeah,
think about all the possible conditions. But another thing about this whole Vrabel interview, it does seem to me, Robby, like Titans Twitter is like this big divide of, like, people are like, oh, where's Vrabel getting his job? I thought he was amazing. And then people who were like, oh, see, I told you that he's going to go somewhere and win a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? It's like Vrabel's career from here is going to be so closely tracked by everybody. And
It
it's like
is.
on both sides of hate him and love him. And, you got to pick a side on the Vrabel thing.
My favorite part of yesterday, to continue to pile on to our good friend that's coming on the program at 7 o'clock, was his tweet that read, "The Patriot Way is dead. Mike Vrabel isn't getting interviews. Bill O'Brien isn't getting interviews. Josh McDaniels isn't getting interviews. Matt Patricia isn't getting interviews. No Patriots execs are getting interviews." Now, first off, Mike Vrabel, I think, got an interview. It was announced with the Chargers maybe like an hour after this tweet went out, which is just incredible. And then Bill O'Brien got hired at Ohio State, which I realize is not the NFL. I don't know that did anybody in the world expect Josh McDaniels or Matt Patricia to get head coaching interviews based on the way that that's gone?
No, I mean, that's the thing. Actually, if anything, this year proves the last year proves to us that somehow the Patriot way is the ultimate zombie of all zombies. I mean, Daniels keeps getting head coaching jobs, and Nick Sirianni's like, how about Matt Patricia? He looks really
Matt
smart
Patricia.
with that pencil in his ear. I just feel like he's really smart. Yeah, you take over the defense. I'm sure that'll go well.
Yeah.
I mean, God, yeah, that's amazing though. Someone, I actually. Well, I sent it to you guys, and then there was like a copy of the tweet, and I actually sent it to him too, and he never responded to me. So,
H-Man on Twitter says Vrabel's losing no matter where he goes. He surrounds himself with terrible buddy coaches. This is from H-Man on Twitter.
you know what I do look forward to is someday. Someday I do look forward to like not like discussing what Vrabel does or doesn't do. Like he's leaving. Like can we like the whole buddy coach thing, we've talked about that. We've had like about 1,000 segments about that. I mean, he definitely has not made all good assistant hires. There's no doubt about that. So I don't think it's all just his buddies from the sandbox growing up in Ohio.
What are we gonna do when like Brian Callahan or Bobby Slowick gets hired and they bring in a bunch of their guys with them? We're going to be like, oh, there's Bobby Slowick. He's continuing that Mike Vrabel way of hiring coaches he knows.
This loser brings his dad. Oh, my gosh. His dad. Yeah. Again, the model for not bringing your buddies in is the Panthers. David Tepper's like, I just want to put a bunch of smart coaches together with all different systems and see how it works out. That went very well for Bryce Young as a rookie. But we'll see. Again, like whatever your reasoning is for hating Vrabel. Chip Cruz, friend of mine from here in Nashville, huge, longtime Chargers fan, and he immediately was like, "No, thank you" on the Vrabel. Mediocre Jeff Fisher coach, and I'm like, well, I don't think he's had a Jeff Fisher career. He's had 2 bad years in a row here, but before that, it was better than Jeff Fisher. But hey, man. You know what? You lose in this league. It's attached to your name, and that's just going to hurt you.
I still think Seattle probably more likely than the Chargers, but we'll see. I mean, a lot of that depends on Harbaugh, right? Like if Harbaugh decides that he's staying at Michigan, then maybe it is Vrabel that they go with there. I really like the Harbaugh part of this, and what he's going to do is really intriguing to me.
Yeah, I personally don't think Harbaugh. I don't think Harbaugh would voluntarily stay at Michigan for over the Chargers job. I think that contract stuff he threw out of them is kind of proof of that, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. No matter what I do, I can kill 7 people, and I get and you guys will you will throw a meat shield out there to the trial so that I am not got on trial for murder. Thank you. I mean, I think it would be the Chargers, maybe swayed by Vrabel. I don't know who else. I mean, but I think it's probably going to be real soon here that we hear about Harbaugh to the Chargers. Speaking of the Chargers, they interviewed David Shaw. So Schefter just retweeted this morning that the Titans are making David Shaw their 11th candidate. How about that?
A lot of candidates out there for the Tennessee Titans. 11 of them. Like, obviously, the Titans have been through a coaching search before, Joe. I'm trying to think, and I could be totally wrong. Like, I don't remember in the past them being connected to / interviewing this many people. This seems like a lot.
Yeah. I guess if you do this, if you don't get your top, A, B, C, D, or whatever, you can always say, whoever you get, well, that was our first choice. We interviewed him. If you interview everybody, then you can always say that you got your first choice.
Well, that is 100% true. No question about that. 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll revisit some comments that Charles Robinson had on our show yesterday and throw the question out there. Do the Titans have a reputation problem around the NFL? We'll get into that coming up next. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tomorrow for Vanderbilt men's basketball. Commodores taking on Mississippi State on the road. Tip off at 2:30, pregame at 2 o'clock. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
We have a piece coming out later today where Joy Epstein and we reached out to 6 like a mix of coaches and executives, and we asked them to rank the 7 openings. We said, look, we're going to do it on point system, 1 to 7, add it up and give us sort of your reasonings why. And the Titans finished 6th. And let's see, 1 5th place vote, 4 6th place votes. And someone voted them 7th, like worse than Carolina. And I was stunned when we talked to people just how damaging the Vrabel firing was to just sort of the questions of what's going on inside the organization. Like it was like, okay, well, if they're going to fire Mike, who's really well respected across the league, both in executive circles and head coaching circles, people are like, well, then why? Like, what do they want? Like if he's not good enough as a coach or as a leader or whatever, and he and Amy may have been on the different pages there, it just raised a huge red flag for other people that could potentially be on these lists.
That was Charles Robinson on with us yesterday discussing the Titans head coach opening and how the reputation may be for the Titans around the league. So, Joe, you heard it there in the poll that Charles Robinson was referencing. The Titans finished 6th out of the 7 job openings from the people that were asked, be that coaches, executives, whoever. And also some concerns apparently around the league of the way the Vrabel situation went down, the ownership, the leadership for the Titans, all these different things. So having navigated through all that, having seen the Mike Sando piece yesterday also at The Athletic, do you feel like the Titans have a reputation problem around the rest of the National Football League with their ownership, with the way their franchise has operated over the course of the last year or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair way to say it. We're in the moment, so sometimes things like this are a little more dramatized because it just happened. But again, you look at the last year, I think that the Titans have become one of the teams where coaches are going to look at it and say, okay, what is happening there in that building? And that was not the case a year ago. Now, it wouldn't have mattered a year ago because it looked like the Titans had signed up for a whole bunch of stability, and so they had a lot of success, and they were probably going to ride it through some ups and downs and see how it worked out. And we know what happened. I mean, they've moved on. Look, some Titans fans right now are like, why do I want to sit around when things start going bad? John Robinson should have been fired. Mike Vrabel should have been fired. What's the problem here? And that's fine. If that's how you feel, that's fine. But just understand what Charles said there is is the reality of how people are looking at it. So what Mike Sando wrote too. It's so I think there is a problem. I think there is some hesitation from coaching candidates, but we'll see, right? We'll see how it turns out with this coaching search. Well, I don't know what their ranking is of coaches, but I can tell you that Brian Callahan's high on it. And that's pretty obvious, right?
Sure.
I mean, when you see the first person to get a second interview, and just knowing that Brian Callahan, I think, is kind of around the league, I think there's a lot of momentum for him. He would be an example of someone who, like, how much does that give him pause? Again, like, you're going to get someone who's a viable NFL head coaching candidate to be your coach. And if that person is not only a good coach, but also like someone who can kind of galvanize, I've used that word twice in the 6 o'clock hour.
You have,
can lead the way and all that stuff and work with Rand Carthon and all that, then you're fine. But yeah, right now, absolutely. What Charles said, I think, is something to be taken seriously, and the Titans need to take it seriously. Amy Adams Strunk needs to take it seriously.
One of the things that if I'm a head coaching candidate, that's not a deal breaker, but would bother me the more that I thought about it, that I don't think enough people are talking about. Like, it's easy to look at what's gone down here with Vrabel, and let's say you got a problem with the way the Vrabel stuff went down. You think he's a good coach, he should have been fired. That's fine. Certainly, when you factor in losing 18 to 24 games, I've got a lot more acceptance firing Vrabel this time around than I would have last year. But apparently, Amy Adams Strunk gave significant consideration to firing Mike Vrabel last year, which, if I'm a candidate, I'm thinking to myself, okay, so you were the number one seed in 2021. You lost in the divisional round. You gave Mike Vrabel and John Robinson contract extensions in 2022, January of 2022. And apparently, that same year, you fired John Robinson in 2022 and gave heavy consideration to firing Mike Vrabel that same year. What does that mean? Like that'd be one thing that I'd be trying to really weigh and figure out if I'm a coaching candidate. Does that mean you're just going to fly off the handle?
Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up. Now, that was from our story last week with Diana and me, and the heavy consideration was not the term, but consideration, and that's where
I have heard from some people I've talked to, it's a little bit heavy.
Heavy?
Yes.
Okay. Well, yes, it's a fair thing to bring up, and the thing is, that's one of those things that in the post firing of Vrabel, which everybody wants to get their side of the story out, that's sort of one of those things that it's like, okay, well, I suppose you could look at it like there was some patience shown then because he got this year. But like you said, now, if you're a coaching candidate looking back at that, you're like, wait a minute, what? Now, again, I think the consideration had to do with the idea of, is this marriage going to work when you have different timelines? And is it better to just make a clean break? Which, as we know, it didn't work, right?
It did
not. Yeah. But sure, throw that into the list of things you're looking at and like, how much of a, like, what's it's also Rand Carthon. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, it's early, no idea. He came from, he's been with good organizations. Really, if you go back to the Falcons when he was scouting for them, I mean, successful building of rosters at 3 different places, but you still don't know him as a GM. So you have the owner who is rising up the list of owners in the NFL who do wacky things. And then you have the GM who is very unproven. I mean, there are definitely better situations for prospective candidates in terms of that. And that's the one thing Charles said yesterday that like I said yesterday, the idea that number one is always owner. I guess, right. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, who's paying you? It's just also like, I feel like for the most part, if you're a coach in this league, you understand you're going to be working for a billionaire, probably a billionaire who inherited the billions at this point in this league. So, you're going to have to deal with some crap, right? Except for like in a few places where, it's extraordinarily good.
Let's go back to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Adam in Portland. Adam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, bud. Happy Friday.
You too.
Dude, do you find yourself – all right, so I hear you guys talking, so I called this morning. I'm like, these guys are singing to me because last night I don't know if y'all go through this. I'm playing cards, and you find yourself – it's almost like Biden and Trump. Like you find yourself defending or not defending Vrabel one way or the other, like in public. Do people ask y'all, but what do you think about that fire? Well – number one, do I always have to have an opinion about this? But I'm like, yeah, I hate it. I'm glad they fired him. Like, do I have to say that out loud? Because you're going to tick off half the other people that liked him. But I always say it. I'm like, I was ready, dude. Like, and I think she was too. So I defend her because number one, what else are you going to do? She's here. She's not going anywhere. I like Amy, dude. Like before she fired him, I felt like she needed to do something. I called you guys, and I was like, I don't need team mom. I need an owner to step up and make a decision here. And she did it. So I'm hoping that a lot of the fan base can at least – I mean, Rand Carthon's had one draft, and I thought it was a pretty good draft. And that's why I get sick of Jerry because I'm like, dude, just give him a chance. Like he's so far he's done good stuff. So I'm like, I think it's headed in the right direction. I want to see which coach they pick. I think it could be a good thing for everybody, man.
Thanks for calling. I appreciate it, buddy. Don't want team mom, wants an owner. I like that. That's good.
Yeah. And that's fine. Again, I think there's plenty of fans who are like, good. Thank you, Amy. But again,
Sure.
what we're talking about coaching candidates and how they look at it, right? Like,
Right.
is it like the first sign of trouble? Am I on the hot seat?
And again, just to clarify, like none of this is going to keep the Titans from being able to hire somebody. Like so somebody's going to be
Right.
the head coach of the Titans, and based on the candidates that are available, it's probably going to be somebody that you can sell.
Yeah.
Now we'll see whether or not it's the right move, but I think you'll certainly be able to hire somebody that you can sell to your fan base.
Right. If it is David Shaw or Mike Kafka, that may be a little tougher. But if they have to reach that far, they can always say, "Hey, you don't know how we ranked them. You don't know how we ranked our coaching board." LD says that they treat coaching hire the same way they treat the draft. Roll the dice, play the board.
It could be like the offensive line coaching stuff last year of the interview of guys. You wouldn't believe the interview that Mike Kafka put together. We had to do it. He had to be the one we hired.
So are you saying you think Vrabel lied about Jason Hodeling's interview?
No, I'm just saying that apparently a lot of emphasis was placed on that interview.
Hufftailing? I gotta get this right.
I'm pretty sure it's hoteling.
Hodeling?
Sure. He's gone now.
Well, not necessarily.
I feel pretty confident about it. 615-737.
Maybe he'll interview really well again.
Well, maybe so. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, it's time for Call Your Shot Friday. We'll take your called shots, your bold predictions in the world of sports. 615-737-1025, our phone number, our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Divisional weekend in the NFL. The coaching search still going on for the Titans. Preds back in action, whatever way you want to take it. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
sports weekend has arrived. You know what that means.
Shoot your shot.
It's time for Call Your Shot Friday with Robby and Rexrode on ESPN 1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
It is that time of the week, time for Call Your Shot Friday here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll take your called shots, your bold predictions on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Joe Rexrode, how did we do last week in Call Your Shot Friday?
Okay. Let's see here. Nick. Look at Nick. Next Pats head coach will be Gerard Mayo before we're off the air Monday. I think I don't know about the before we're off the air Monday part, but it's pretty close.
I'm pretty sure. I think it happened
I think so, right?
Friday. I think it happened.
Yeah, I think it was that day that I called it.
Oh, did it happen that day?
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh, nice. Well done, Nick.
Heck yeah.
My days, weeks, months, years are mixed up. Also, you have Gus Nyquist extends his point streak to 10 games and then 11 Saturday.
He
Got
did
10
not.
right.
Just 10.
Got 10 right. Robby, Mike Loxley, next coach at Alabama. That did not happen. That was kind of the name thrown around there. Bills will beat the Steelers by 20 or more.
Only 14.
Yep. Jordan Love, a 60-plus yard TD pass on the first drive. No, but he did lead a touchdown.
He did.
On the first drive with some expert play calling from his head coach.
One of many touchdowns.
That's right. Cole Smith, 2 goals against Dallas.
It's a good effort.
Yeah. Matt Stafford, 400 passing yards in his return to Detroit. He did not throw for 400.
No.
Did he throw for 3? I think he got over 3, right? I think so.
I'll look.
Yeah. In the meantime, Jared Goff, 2 picks against his old team. He did not. I'm sorry, Jared Goff. I apologize. Jordan Love, 4 touchdown passes in Dallas.
Hit 3.
And then I had UC Saros getting a shutout at Dallas. So he didn't even wait.
He didn't play.
He wasn't even net, was he? Yeah. So there you go. By
the way, Stafford 367. So pretty close.
Pretty close. All right,
close.
We had a decent week.
Nick Keyser, your called shots for this week.
Yeah, I'll fire off some quick ones for you. Cody Glass will play in Arizona. He played last night, his first game in 2 games. He'll have 5 face-off wins tomorrow evening. And he will also have a primary assist. Look, I'm trying to be high on him in a couple different ways. Face-off wins, one of them for sure. He's talked about that with me a little bit. And then he needs to get on the score sheet. I don't think he scores, but I think he gets a good assist against the Coyotes. I'm going to say Nashville also wins by 2 goals after allowing the first one in Arizona. I know Robbie's dying at my 5 face-off wins.
Would you like to predict like how many different line changes he'll make? Is there anything else you'd like to add to it?
Sure. Let's do Cole Smith over-under on the shifts. My gosh. Look. And then
Hey, well, hold on. I got to interrupt because I also have a Cody Glass shot.
Okay.
Mike's shot is Cody Glass will score 2 goals at Arizona. See, there you go.
No.
There you go.
That's a shot.
I just don't make
that is a shot.
I make reasonable ones that I think are attainable, but we don't expect him to possibly do, I would say.
I am absolutely going to be. I am white knuckling every single face-off.
There is no way that Cody Glass can win 5 face-offs.
3 face-offs, I'll give him. Yeah, you are
not 5.
You are crazy with the 5 face-offs. All right,
just
go ahead.
Watch. Last one. I'm going to say Vanderbilt beats Tennessee in women's basketball this weekend by 6 points. Last one.
Ooh.
That was it.
Okay, I like that.
Are
you sure? Do you have any more?
That's it.
Any more hockey shots you'd like to call?
That's it. I promise.
Okay, Joe, go ahead.
On that last, again, I hate to nitpick you, nitpick you, but yeah, that's fine. Well, I know. I know. It's a 6:00 hour.
Boo.
Vanderbilt is actually in the NCAA tournament right now, and Tennessee isn't, according to the bracketologist. But I'll count that because it's at Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll count.
He gave a specific number too. It's got to be by 6.
That's true. He gave us. Okay, it's fine. All right.
Golly, y'all should have had rules for me when I started this in July. By golly,
just call shots. That's the only rule. Call shots.
Go ahead,
Robby.
Called shots for this week.
All right, Baker Mayfield, 400 yards passing against the Lions.
Keep it going.
Bake show. Those last 33 yards that Matthew Stafford didn't get, that might be the difference in the game, folks.
Well, it actually could be.
I've already said Cody Glass 2 goals at Arizona, so there you go. Patrick Mahomes will outrush Josh Allen.
Ooh, I like that one. That's a good one.
Thank you. Aaron Jones, a touchdown run of 50-plus yards against the Niners.
Okay.
And finally, Nico Collins will have 150-plus yards receiving and a touchdown for Houston in Baltimore.
Nice. I like that. All right, my called shots. Tommy Novak will score 2 goals against the Arizona Coyotes. They're going Glass. I'm going Novak, 2 goals. The Titans will hire Mike McDonald as their next head coach. Mike McDonald will be the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans, keeping alive a streak of Mikes. And nobody's talking about Mike McDonald right now, so that's why I think it's going to happen. Spice things up, which I'm sure will go over well with the Titans fan base.
Yes, I want to hear the reaction to that.
Yes. Jordan Love will complete 80% of his passes, an 80% completion percentage for Jordan Love against the San Francisco 49ers. And finally, to ruin one of my picks in Pigskin Pick'em, the Lions will beat the Buccaneers by 17 points. The Lions by 17 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Joe, your thoughts?
Wow. I mean, don't do this to the Lions fans.
17 points.
Don't give them hope. Okay.
I feel great about them.
Do you? Okay.
I do.
All right.
Liam on the text line says, Joe, in 3 years. Yeah, but the Lions won't win their 3rd Super Bowl.
Exactly. Well, they're not going to win another one.
I promise you. They
Losers.
Brian says his called shot. My called shot, Mahomes will only need 1 helmet in this game. Did you see that last week?
Oh, my gosh. That was crazy.
It was.
Like all of a sudden watching Game of Thrones and, dude.
And then he took his helmet off on the field and was just allowed to come right back in. I thought you couldn't do that, but apparently you can if you're Patrick Mahomes.
Well, that's college, though, right?
I'm pretty sure. I think it's pros too, right?
I mean, I get that must be just obviously. I mean, in a case like that, they must right. I like that the ref said, okay, his helmet just cracked. I mean, let the dude put a helmet on, right? And play.
I mean, I didn't have a problem with it, but people were going nuts about that on Twitter. Like, oh, it's Patrick Mahomes. His helmet comes off. Chris Collinsworth is over here singing. Yeah.
The rigged NFL.
David in Arkansas says, my called shot, the Texans lose this weekend. It makes Slowick immediately available. He'll be named the next head coach of the Titans by this time next Friday. It's from David in Arkansas.
That's music to Titans fans' ears.
Yes, it is.
Oh, my goodness. To take him, get him as your head coach, and take him away from Houston. Yeah, actually, now that he mentions it, I imagine Titans fans probably should be rooting pretty hard for the Ravens. Just clear the schedule for him and see where if he wants to go somewhere and if it's you.
Yeah, just let the Ravens keep winning, and then you can go take their head coach, and they can take Derrick Henry next year. That's how things are going to go down. Just go take Mike McDonald, not their head coach. Go take their defensive coordinator and make him your head coach.
That may happen.
615-737-1025. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Jared Stillman. We'll discuss the Titans head coaching search with him. And I'll probably get on him about Roman Yossi as well because that guy seems to be playing pretty well. We'll do all that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Hour 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Friday morning. And we welcome in our friend Jared Stillman to the program. Jared, fresh off 2 consecutive wins in the Jared versus Joe competition. It's a competition once again. Jared, good morning. How are you?
It's great. It's great. I just was very, very busy researching David Shaw to see the next Titans head coach, see what his background outside of Stanford may be. I'm sure Joe is going to pump his tires to be head coach just like he pumped the OC from the Panthers. So got to do all of our due diligence around here.
So this is the 11th candidate.
No, I won't do that.
The 11th candidate that the Titans are linked to. Are they casting too wide a net here? They're talking to a lot of people, Jared. A lot of people.
I mean, yesterday me and TD laughed at the Chargers interviewing David Shaw as okay, because they interviewed Leslie Frazier and David Shaw. So, that's going to allow the Chargers to hire Jim Harbaugh whenever they can decide either the money or the power or whatever it is that they care about to be able to hire Jim Harbaugh. And, we laughed about it yesterday. I didn't think that the Titans, who are being sued for basically skimping the Rooney Rule on Ray Horton, I didn't think that they were going to turn around and interview David Shaw.
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming either. Did not see the David Shaw one coming.
I mean,
yeah,
I guess.
I thought Shaw was.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, I thought Shaw was a guy who was being used by some teams to satisfy the Rooney Rule, and the Titans don't need to do that. So, I don't know. I used to think David Shaw, when he had it rolling at Stanford, there was always talk every year like he might go to the NFL. So at one point he was a viable NFL head coaching candidate, but obviously things went real south on him there.
I just look, whatever. I mean, do whatever you want, hire whoever you want. I think the Rooney Rule doesn't work anyways. I think it's got good intentions, but I think quite frankly, I think the Rooney Rule is bordering on disgraceful, because I think about these coaches like Aaron Glenn or Thomas Brown or whomever it may be, and every time that they go into an interview, they have to be wondering in their head, do they want to interview me, or are they interviewing me in order to satisfy the Rooney Rule? And that's really, really disgraceful that somebody even has to think that going into an interview. But David Shaw, when he gets a call, hey, did you like to interview for the Titans job? What's he thinking? If I'm him, I'm are they going to give me $10,000? I'll do it for $10,000. I'll interview for the job for $10,000. I'm not flying to Nashville. While it's freaking snowing, I am not flying to Nashville to interview for a job that I am not going to get.
Yeah, I did not see that one coming with David Shaw whatsoever. So Bobby Slowick, that interview gets completed last night, which I know was just met with great applause by you. The Thomas Brown interview was completed yesterday. Obviously, we know that
Joe was very happy about that.
Yes, Joe. Yes, Joe. Very fired up.
Thomas Brown has some good things to offer. I mean, that's all I'm saying. I never said he was my favorite. I just said here's some things about this guy that you might want to consider, other than Jared, who just says, how many points a game do the Panthers score? He sucks. He sucks.
I said this to TD yesterday.
Good research, Jared. Good research.
I look at Thomas Brown the same way I look at your quarterback, Bryce Young, Joe, which is I don't blame Bryce Young for why the Panthers were so bad. And I don't blame Thomas Brown for why the Panthers were so bad either. The owner's a disgrace. The head coach was a doofus. I don't blame those guys specifically and say, okay, this is all your fault. But I can't put Bryce Young in the Pro Bowl because he didn't play well enough, whether it was his fault or not. He didn't play well enough to make the Pro Bowl. And I can't make Thomas Brown the head coach because regardless of whether or not it was all his fault or not, he didn't coach well enough in order to be a head coach in the NFL.
Right. It's a little bit of a flawed comparison, but I understand what you're saying. I want to see demonstrated success, like Bobby Slowick has done. That's why I have him ahead of Thomas Brown, for the record. But I think the better way to put that would be, let me ask you this. Would you dismiss Bryce Young as your quarterback, as a quarterback you think can start and play well in the NFL?
No, I would not.
Based on last year. Okay.
No, but I'm not going out of my way to go get him.
Better. Okay. Well, all right. Well, that's the better comparison.
Again, 3 first-round picks for him.
Well, there's that.
You and
By the way,
Tepper.
Brian Johnson is interviewing with the Titans today, Eagles offensive coordinator, which, Jared, I think the Brian Johnson part of this, you and I'm with you, I think, want no part of.
Well, again, I mean, how much of it's his fault and how much of it is Sirianni's fault and Jeffrey Lurie's fault and Howie Roseman's fault and AJ's fault? I don't know. But let me say this. It does feel to me like the Titans have decided who they're going to hire because it's very clear. I'm guessing this Brian Johnson interview is going to be done in person since the Eagles are out.
That would be my guess.
And we're at the divisional round of the playoffs. So what's happened here, I don't think the Titans sat down and said, all right, let's interview David Shaw. I think the Titans looked at it like, okay, how fast, once we decide who we want to hire, how fast can we get through the Rooney Rule? And so it wouldn't surprise me if they said, all right, bring Brian Johnson in ASAP, and now let's interview David Shaw because they have an idea of who it is they want to hire and they want to pounce. So, I can't sit here and say, okay, they interviewed Slowick last night, and now they put out there that they're going to interview David Shaw, so it's going to be Slowick. I can't say that because I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me if the Titans, one way or another, whether it's Callahan or whether it's Slowick or whether it's anybody they've already talked to, McDonald, they've said, okay, we know who it is we want, and as soon as they lose, we're going to want to hire them. So let's go ahead now that we know who it is that we want to hire, and through the back channels with Rand and the agent or Burke and the agent or whatever it is, they've already kind of worked out a deal. So let's go ahead and do this and get it out of the way. And then that way, as soon as that coach loses, we can hire him. And I do think that there may be a sign that they've made up their mind.
Hold on. You got to help me with the math here, Jared. 2 external minority candidates that you need to interview, correct?
Correct.
Okay. They've interviewed Thomas Brown.
That was virtual. That didn't count.
Because that was virtual.
It has to be 2 in-person external minority candidates. So
Shaw and Johnson would be the first 2.
Correct.
Okay. You may be right about something.
Well, we'll see what happens on that front. All right, I do have to get on you.
By the way, I'm not discounting the Brian Johnson thing. Like, that wouldn't be a real interview. I mean, I don't see why I'd hire Brian Johnson, especially the way Troy Aikman talked about, well, I think he's a fine young coach, but he's definitely no Shane Steichen on Monday night. But
yeah, he's a viable candidate, though.
I do think that when you start bringing in David Shaw, like when you bring in David Shaw or Leslie Frazier, I mean, you might as well be bringing in like Derek Mason at MTSU and Derek Mason on our show and say, all right, we're interviewing them for head coaching jobs because David Shaw, I mean, when's the last time he coached? Like 3 years ago? And at the end, he wasn't even good at Stanford. He's not going to be an NFL coach. And that's the embarrassing part of the way that these teams treat the Rooney Rule. So that's what makes me think like, yeah, okay, the Titans are making sure to get this interview done because they already know who they want to hire.
So I want to congratulate you first off on your Patriot Way tweet yesterday where an hour and 15
How
minutes
about
later,
that?
Vrabel
Holy
was
crap.
getting
I've been
interviewed
cold
by the
takes
Chargers.
before. I mean, there's only one other time I feel like this has like happened where like I have this like take.
Oh yeah, one other time.
Later,
Yeah.
It's like bang. A couple years ago when the Preds played Dallas in the playoffs, I was tweeting out about how Craig Smith sucked in that game, and then he turned around and scored the game winner in overtime. And then Joe went up to him and was like, yeah, did Jared Stillman piss you off on the radio the other day when he was talking about what you said? And Craig Smith was like, yeah.
Did I? I did not.
In a veiled way. Remember, he was like, yeah, people were taking that out of context, what I said in the locker room before the game. But I mean, wow. That being said, I don't think Vrabel has any chance to get that job. I don't think Vrabel's even interested in that job. I think that is a mutual benefit. The Chargers interview Vrabel so that they show Jim Harbaugh they've got some leverage as Jim Harbaugh's camp starts pulling this. He may go back to Michigan if he can get full immunity from anything the NCAA does and still get his $100 million. So it's like, okay, well, we'll interview Mike Vrabel. So if you want to play that game, we'll play that game too. And then I think Vrabel has to at least pretend to try to get a job in order to get his money. So I think this may be a mutually beneficial David Shaw-like sham interview.
So you think he doesn't want to coach this year?
I think he would take the Chargers job because of the quarterback, even though, Joe, They're $40 million over the cap, so I don't know what they're going to do. They might have to cut Joey Bosa. They might have to get rid of the whole team. They may have to get rid of Justin Herbert. What are they going to do?
What are they going to do with the cap? Jared, we all know it's a soft cap. We all know teams keep their top players. You won't acknowledge that they have to cut other players to keep their top players in addition to restructuring contracts, which means the cap is real. Shut up about the cap.
I bet they'll go out and get some players.
Jared, you've died on this hill.
I mean, they're not even going to have the money to sign their draft class. What are they going to do?
No one ever says that. The vultures have picked at your corpse on the hill. The maggots are now circling on the hill. Stop it. We've seen you die on the hill long enough. It's enough.
My favorite thing? I actually thought about this yesterday. My favorite thing about the salary cap and its fakeness is that people are slowly but surely getting there. And the first step in this, the baby step, is the restructuring contracts. Robby, you remember when restructuring a contract used to look like a selfless act of kindness to your team, where it was
no, that was only if it was a pay cut, Jared.
No,
that's always been the case.
Remember when Kevin Byard was like, I'll redo my contract for us to keep Harold Landry if I have to, like I did with Clowney. And I'm like, that's so kind of you, Kevin Byard, for you to sit there and say, I'll take all my money up front if it helps us sign this other guy. Yes. So now people have realized that restructuring contracts really isn't selfless. And so that's the first step in towards everybody realizing the mirage that is a salary cap.
That's not new at all. Like, Brady took less money. That's that. People who get contracts restructured, it's not that, and that's not new. Some people catch on, some people don't. Some people like you don't catch on to the fact that it's actually still real. And that cap space like the Titans have does matter because that's space. They don't have to do weird stuff to create space. They have the space because it's real, because it matters. Thank you. Also, you're wrong about Brian Johnson. It's a virtual interview.
I'm not completely convinced that Brady took less as much as everybody thinks, because one time I brought that up and the old man looked at me, and remember, he was like lead negotiator for the Patriots, and he looked at me and said, "You've never seen a Tom Brady contract," which basically was like, shut the hell up. So I don't even know what the truth behind that is.
Well, I always believed that Kraft bought him an island secretly.
Well, maybe so. Jared, I will give you this last chance here before we depart ways on the show today, to give you the chance to maybe retract your statement on Roman Yossi, or at least offer some context to the way that he's played.
So, I saw the game Monday. I saw Roman Yossi on that 4-on-4, the 2-on-1. He's day late, dollar short again. And Mark Stone puts puck in the back of the net. And I'm like, this is too many times this year. I see him on the ice in a defensive situation where I expect better from him, and the puck ends up in the back of the net. So I asked Barry Trotz about it, and Barry Trotz told me, no concerns about Roman, but, he's learning a new system, and that's okay. And I was like, okay, maybe Barry just didn't want to just, immediately take a squat on the show, which I get. And then I asked Hal about it yesterday, and Hal was like, I think he's playing great. I think there's an adjustment there, but even Willie and I decided to look at the stats because we're trying to match up what the stats are doing with our eyes, and the stats are incredible, and it's this and it's this. And I'm like, I'm not saying that Roman Yossi is a terrible player, because he's not. But the standard with which I'm used to Roman Yossi playing on both ends of the ice, so do not give me his offensive numbers, because I'm talking about both ends of the ice. Specifically,
his defensive numbers are pretty good too.
His own
continue.
End. Yeah, the Corsi 5-on-5 guru.com.
No, the Jared eye test is way more valuable than that.
Yeah.
No. Straight up bleep. You said straight up bleep, Jared.
So again, Yossi's still a good player, but he's just not like that dominant A1 defenseman. That I know, like, in his own end, he hasn't really ever been truly like a dominant shutdown defensive defenseman. But
that's correct.
I just, there's too many times that puck ends up in the back of the net. He's on the ice, and I feel like I'm looking at Dante Fabro. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's what I expect out of Fabro, not out of you. And so I didn't get rebuked hard enough by Barry or Hal for me to change my opinion on this.
Oh, God.
Okay, Jared. You're rebuked hard enough.
Did you guys stay up for the whole game last night?
I stayed up for about 75% of it.
I got to tell you, that first period was one of the most boring first periods I've ever seen in my life. Second period was incredibly entertaining. And then I fell asleep in the second intermission. I couldn't make it to the third.
Well, they won, so good for them. Jared, stay safe this weekend. Enjoy the snow. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, here's my question for you guys. Will there be a Titans head coach the next time I come on the show on Friday?
I say yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree. And that's why they're interviewing David Shaw. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Jared. Appreciate it. We'll
See you
react
guys.
to what Jared had to say there. 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Friday morning as it continues to snow, at least in my neck of the woods outside. Joe, is it snowing where you are?
It actually isn't. So I guess we'll be next. But I just looked at the forecast and it's like 80% chance in the next hour. So awesome.
Beautiful. Yeah. Haven't had enough of that yet. Really a lot of fun. Got some tickets to give away to see Disturbed with special guests Falling in Reverse at Bridgestone Arena coming up on Saturday, February 17th. Be caller 3-615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller 3 will win a pair of tickets to see Disturbed with special guests Falling in Reverse at Bridgestone Arena coming up on Saturday, February 17th. Joe, what did you make of Jared's theory that maybe the Titans have discovered who it is they want to hire as their next head coach, and that the interview of David Shaw happening today. Apparently, Brian Johnson being interviewed by the Titans. Aaron Glenn, at some point, we think is being interviewed by the Titans, according to reports this morning as well. What do you make of Jared's theory that maybe the Titans have found their coach?
Yeah, I mean, the David Shaw thing, I would speak to that. He may be right. Zach, our buddy, football F words and other F words pod, said the rule, definitely the Brian Johnson has to be virtual according to the rules. I don't know exactly the specific language there, but if that's true, then he wouldn't be part of this. I do have to say, like, if that's, I mean, David Shaw is not to me a viable NFL head coaching candidate. He was at one point when 10 years ago, he had Stanford rolling. And then the last few years at Stanford went downhill. And so, I mean, I think he's a viable. In fact, is he just not coaching at all? Is that right?
I mean, I don't think that he is. I think he's just not coaching.
And this is where, well, I agree. I mean, I always go back and forth on the Rooney Rule because I agree that it's like it's insulting, for someone who isn't really an NFL head coaching candidate but satisfies the rule for interviewing external minority candidates. Yeah, so okay, so his last year there was 22. I guess I thought it was a year earlier than that. So he's been out for a year. And I think David Shaw as a position coach or an OC in the NFL makes sense. He had been in the NFL for a long time. I mean, he was in the NFL from 97 to until basically he went with Harbaugh to Stanford, a year later. So it's been a long time, but he's been in the NFL for a long time. He was in there for more than a decade. But like, it's like out of nowhere, you're going to interview David Shaw. It's clear with the Chargers, right? It's satisfying the Rooney Rule. It's just like, if you're David Shaw, but then the other side of the Rooney Rule is, there are interviews that lead to people getting their name out there and someone blows someone away in an interview. And it's like, that interview wouldn't have happened if if not for the rule, right? So there's a benefit to it in theory, and I think it has played out that way, that there's a benefit to people getting in front of people. But like a David Shaw, it seems like such a sham. So maybe Jared is right, and this means that they are trying to move quickly to satisfy that. And but he's talking Slowick. I mean, Callahan is the guy who has a second interview, right?
Like if they're moving quickly, like Callahan's the first name that came to my mind, just given what we've already known about him. Now, again, they've not been able to interview a Slowick or a Johnson or an Aaron Glenn in person yet because their teams are still in the playoffs. But when he talked about moving quickly, the first name that came to mind to me was Brian Callahan.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, I do feel like by the time we do this show next week, I'll continue to find reasons to be staying at home. You'll be at Disney World. We'll probably have a Tennessee Titans head coach that we know about.
We'll see what happens
if they get their guy. That's the thing too.
That's the thing.
Are they, if there's an acceptance of an offer? There's also
that's
that.
The thing. There's the other side of it too that has to work out. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, it's time for Pigskin Pick'em. We'll get into the divisional round playoff games this weekend. Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com will join us for the entire 8 o'clock hour. We'll get into all things Tennessee Titans with him. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan Sunday for Vanderbilt women's basketball. Commodores will be on the road taking on Tennessee. Pregame begins at 1:45, tip-off at 2 o'clock. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 94.9thefan.com. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Now, it's time for Pigskin Pick'em with Robby and Rexrode on ESPN 1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
It is that time of the week, time for Pigskin Pick'em here on Robby and Rexrode. A standings update in the competition as we head into divisional weekend here. Nick Keyser 4-2 with his lock last week. Joe Rexrode 3-3 with his lock, and I was 3-3 with no lock. So still a semi-decent weekend for all of us in the competition, which brings the overall standings to Nick Keyser and Joe Rexrode tied in first place with 71 points apiece. Keyser technically with the edge, with the better overall record of 64-56. Joe Rexrode at 63-57. Keyser 7-13 on his locks. Rexrode 8-12 on his locks. So that's where the point total tie comes from. And then I am at 57-63 overall. 9-11 on my locks. Good for 66 points. So I am 5 points behind the both of you heading into divisional weekend.
You're telling me there's a chance.
It's not over.
It's not over.
Not over.
I got some work to do. With that in mind, let's get things rolling here on divisional weekend. We begin with the Houston Texans on the road against the Baltimore Ravens coming up on Saturday. The Ravens, a 9.5-point favorite in this game. Nick Keyser, you are in first place, so you go first. Ravens, favored by 9.5.
Yeah, I tell you what, I feel good about what D'Amico Ryans has done with the Texans, and I don't like the line, but I'm still going to take the Texans over the Ravens this weekend. And Lamar Jackson, great quarterback, but I think the talent and the versatility of these Texans, they will get the job done this weekend.
So you think they're winning outright?
Yeah.
Wow, look at there. I like it. Joe Rexrode, Ravens, favored by 9.5 in this matchup.
This is a hard one.
It is.
For me. I think the Ravens are going to win. I think it's going to be a game. And, it's like, I think it's just like, is it a tack-on touchdown either way that swings it? The Texans are kind of desperate. They get one late, onside kick doesn't work, or other way around. I'm going to go Texans to cover.
Okay. Well, I'm going Ravens. I think the Ravens are going to dominate in this game. It's been a great story from C.J. Stroud and the Texans, and I think they'll hang in there for a little while. But I think the Ravens ultimately end up winning by a couple touchdowns. I think home field advantage, it kind of feels like the Ravens are on a mission to me, and I think they're really, really good. And they closed out the season well. And it's always interesting, like when teams get the first round bye, how do they come out of the gate in the divisional round? Sometimes it looks really good. Sometimes it looks pretty bad. So we'll see how the Ravens respond to it, but I'll take the Ravens minus 9.5. The Packers and the 49ers coming up in the Saturday night game. 49ers also favored by 9.5. Joe Rexrode, we begin with you. San Francisco by 9.5.
God, I hate this one too. God, the Packers they just got something special going on. The Niners have been sitting around. The problem is, it's hard for me to imagine the Niners, after watching the Packers do what they did to the Cowboys, having any chance of slippage here. But you know what? I'm going to go with the Packers to cover this one too. I'm going to go with both dogs here to cover these big spreads.
I'm going to go 49ers. I think Pack will hang in there for a little while, but I think the 49ers are the best team in football. I have seen what playoff games in that place are like. And look, I just think the 49ers, when you look at the individual matchups in this game, nearly all of them favor the 49ers. Packers are really young. So in some ways, I think that serves them well because maybe they don't know what they don't know heading into this thing. But I'll go with the 49ers to cover the 9.5 at the end of the day. Nick Keyser, San Francisco, favored by 9.5.
Yeah, I just think San Fran's too powerful. I mean, look, maybe the Packers do have something special. Maybe it's a closer game than we would anticipate, but I still like the 49ers in this one. Make it my lock, fellas. I feel good about this one. This is going to be a fun one to watch, but I like how this line looks as opposed to what we just had with the Texans and the Ravens.
I'm ordering a cheesehead for this weekend.
Hey, come on board, man. The water's fine. Packers and 49ers will stick with that game over under The over-under is set at 50.5. I will go under slightly. I think it's going to be, I think the Pack are going to struggle to keep up offensively for a little while in this game. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game than people anticipate. So I'll go under 50.5. Nick Keyser, over-under for Packers and 49ers set at 50.5.
Yeah, I am feeling the under as well. It's not I don't like this one, but that's okay. I feel like it'll be a lower scoring contest than what folks maybe think it will be.
Joe Rexrode, over 50.5 for the Packers and the Niners.
Yeah, give me that over. Give me that over. I see something like a 28-24 kind of game, something like that. Not over by a lot, but I'll take that over.
We move to Joe Rexrode, and little Joey Rexrode, as my father calls him sometimes, teaming with anticipation. The Buccaneers and the Detroit Lions coming up on Sunday. Detroit is favored by 6.5. Nick Keyser, who you got between the Bucs and the Lions?
Oh, the mighty team that will not yield, right, Joe? But I do like Baker. Baker's been great, and I think the Bake Show will light it up. Give me the Buccaneers this weekend.
We're going with the Bucs against the Lions. Joe Rexrode, the Bucs and the Lions. Do we even have to ask the way you're going in this game?
Bucs lock.
Guarantee.
I'm sorry, little Joey Rexrode and all you Lions fans, but this is going to be a classic. Back in 1980, the Lions, Billy Sims, they started 4-0. He was rookie of the year. He was amazing. All they had to do was beat the freaking creamsicle Tampa Bay Bucks at home in the Silverdome in the last game of the season to win the NFC Central. And do you know what happened? I don't need to tell you what happened, do you? One of many miserable days in my life as a Lions fan. Bucs lock.
He's kind of ugly, though.
Detroit Lions lock. I'm locking down on the Lions minus 6.5. I said it earlier. They're going to win by 17 points. The Lions have a lot of momentum going their way. That crowd is going to be electric, and they're going to destroy Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Lions locking down. If the line was minus 16.5, I'd still take it. So give me the Lions in this matchup.
You want to take that? We'll give it to you.
We're not going to do that. I'm so far behind in the competition.
All right.
Bucs and Lions over under 48.5. Joe Rexrode, you got the over or the under in this game?
Yeah, I'm big on the over in this one, for sure. I like the over. I think both offenses are going to have a lot of fun in this game.
I agree. I'm going over in this game as well. Nick Keyser, over under 48.5 for the Lions and the Bucs.
Feels like some backyard football, especially after watching what the Lions were able to do. I think that they'll just honestly build on that. So, yeah, give me the over.
All right, we move to Chiefs and the Bills coming up on the Sunday night game, which technically I believe is 5:30 Central Time here. Bills favored by 2.5. This is an interesting matchup. I'll start first on this one. Kansas City, it felt like they found something last week, and the playoffs are just a different animal. So this one I struggled with, but I think the Bills, full disclosure, I think the Bills are getting to the Super Bowl. I think the Bills are going to go through the playoffs, and they're going to get to the Super Bowl from the AFC side this year. So I will go Bills minus 2.5. It's been an unconventional route for the Bills to get there this year, but I like the way that they're playing towards the end of the season. Give me the Bills at home minus 2.5. Nick Keyser, Buffalo and Kansas City. Buffalo favored by 2.5.
That's kind of how I'm leaning as well. I have been a big fan of their last few weeks, and they have looked like a very different team. They've also gotten a little healthier as well. So, and I like their personnel against the Chiefs this year, and this is going to be a series, like Mahomes said, this is one that will go on for years to come, and I think this time Josh Allen gets it done.
Joe Rexrode, Bills favored by 2.5 at home.
We are going to have some separation this week. Give me the Chiefs. I think they're going to go win this game. I think they did find something last week. I like the Bills too. Look, I could see both of these teams in the Super Bowl. I'm happy to watch either of these teams playing the Ravens in an AFC title game. But I think Mahomes in his first road game in the playoffs is going to show why he's still the best quarterback in the NFL.
Lots of head-to-head matchups this week in Pigskin Pick'em. Whether it's me against Joe Joe against Nick, me against Nick. It's going to be a fascinating weekend in the divisional round of the playoffs. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, really, like the Packers offense kicked some butt this weekend. LaFleur, Love. I'm going to be in good shape, boys.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, you will.
I'm riding the LaFleur Love train.
Coming up next, it's time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning at 7:45 here on the program. We'll do that coming up next. We got Paul Kuharski coming up in the 8 o'clock hour talking all things Tennessee Titans. All that's ahead. Tune in to 93.3 Classic Hits tomorrow night for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders are on the road taking on New Mexico State with pregame beginning at 7:30. Tip off at 8 o'clock. Coverage also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3classichits.com. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment, let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
You're the one who told me I could do anything if I just put my mind to it.
Well, now that you're a little bit older, I can tell you that's a crock. No matter how good you are at something, there's always about 1 million people better than you.
Gotcha. Can't win, don't try.
It is that time of the day, normally time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode or the Rob Rant with myself. But we welcome in our friend and special guest, Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com. PK, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you doing? Joe, in a panic to get out of the rant this morning, just texts me, 5 minutes ago. You have anything? You have anything?
I'm trying to be nice to you. I'm trying to be nice to you.
I'm not particularly satisfied with what I have. I tell him what it is. He said, okay, go for it. So,
I'm a happy person. What can I tell you?
An immediate bailing out of the rant when he knows Kuharsky's coming on in the 8 o'clock hour.
I just know that 80% of Kuharsky's interactions with people are him ranting about something. So, it's like a bodily function for you.
80% of no interactions for me for a week since I've got COVID. So it's amazing that I could come up with something and you can't, considering the fact that I've been at home with one exception, driving my kid with both of us masked to his workout yesterday on the tail end of this puppy. But, I'll give it a go for the people, Joe.
No, good job playing the sympathy card up front in case it sucks.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about my rants sucking. The thing you have to worry about are my rants being about Jarrett Stillman. That's what I didn't want to do, but that's where I am here. Jarrett Stillman's completely incapable of being patient or allowing anything to play out. And so I believe it was yesterday, the day before yesterday, because it's always got to be right on the brink of the thing he says isn't going to happen, happening. So he says, Romeo Crennel, nothing's happening with Romeo Crennel. Nothing's happening with Eric Mangini. Nothing's happening with any of the Belichick guys. Nothing's happening with Mike Vrabel. Patriots way's dead. I mean, first off, was he missing that Belichick seems to be the front runner in Atlanta? And they're getting their ducks in a row in terms of the process. But it seemed like in my timeline, and granted, my timeline is COVID. I come down here, I bang something out, and then I sit on the couch watching TV. But in my time world, it seems like he says that, and then moments later, it comes out that Vrabel's in Los Angeles talking to the Chargers, and 2 other teams are interested. Also, the names that he listed. In what world is anybody expecting Josh McDaniels to be talked to by anybody? In what world is anybody expecting Matt Patricia to be talked to by anybody? Who, by the way, Matt Patricia's not talking to anybody for a head coaching job. Josh McDaniels isn't talking to anybody. He might as well have listed Charlie Weiss. These guys are out of the loop, and they've played out as head coaching candidates.
Matt Patricia was running the Eagles defense,
which was horrific.
Well, I know.
Terry Robisky also is not going to be interviewed by anybody. It's about saying the same thing. Dick LeBeau will not be interviewed by anybody. It's a really news breaking. If Josh McDaniels resurfaces now, it'll be on Belichick's staff. We all know that. So, you could say the Patriots way is dead if you want to. Also, this thing all of a sudden now, it's surfacing. People want to call Mike Vrabel a Bill Belichick disciple. Didn't we snuff that out relatively early? He didn't coach for Belichick. He never preached Belichick principles. He never did the thing all of these guys did where they cut off the sleeves on their hoodie and played authoritative dictator to the degree where they didn't look people in the eye. As I recall, and I recall very clearly, Mike Vrabel arrived in Nashville and learned everyone's name and was very affable to people, opposite of Bill Belichick. Now, at the end, it got ugly and there were weird things going on and the like, but I don't think Mike Vrabel ever tried to be Bill Belichick as all of these other failed Bill Belichickian guys did.
My favorite part of yesterday, PK, Jared had to tweet about the Patriot Way being dead at 11:02 a.m. And I think it was like 1 o'clock where it was announced that Mike Vrabel was interviewing with the Chargers. So you're talking like 2 hours later. The Patriot Way is gone. Vrabel's not getting any interviews. And then boom, here come the Chargers.
I'll explain what I actually meant at 2 o'clock today. And it'll make perfect sense. Don't worry. I'll walk my way out of that box. Trevor Maddich is going to come on, and he'll explain what I meant.
What do you think of the Vrabel Chargers connection?
I mean, look, I think Joe tweeted it. I mean, the thing there is getting past Harbaugh. Harbaugh seems perfect for that job. Maybe who could dumb down their alphaness more for Spanos and seem less aggressive in terms of their personality. And maybe if you could take the edge off a little bit, you would pull in front of the other guy. But I would think he's a strong second candidate to Harbaugh. But Harbaugh has a way of turning people off, I think, with just how much control and how controlling he'll be in terms of stuff. And I will say, and Joe probably has experience with Harbaugh that I do not. I had a experience with Harbaugh as a player, and he was terrific. But I don't know if he's a guy that like needs helmets lined up a certain way during stretch. If he's that crazy, if he's that crazy, then if I'm an owner, I'd prefer somebody less crazy.
No, I think that there's an absolute chance that his craziness turns people off in the interview process without question. But that dude. Elaborate on that. Harbaugh is a player when he was with the Colts.
Harbaugh when he was a player with the Colts is a classic story. And I think he was a lot different of a guy when he was a player. This is my first year covering the league in 1995. And we did those weekly conference calls.
And they got to the title game that year, right? They got to the NFC or AFC title game that year, I think, right? And he had the Hail Mary at the end. If I'm remembering, but anyway.
I'm not remembering because my world was so small because I was living on a beach in Southern California, covering the Raiders, but traveling every single weekend because the Raiders traveled to Oakland for home games, and then we're on the road. So it was 20 consecutive weeks on the road, and as young as I was, and the Al Davis Raider, balloon. Is super tense. They went 8-2. They needed to win one more game the rest of the way to get in the playoffs, and of course, they finished 8-8. It was unbelievable collapse. But they played the Colts, and Harbaugh was on the conference call with us, and he had gone through a tough time before, and somebody asked him a question about the tough time, and he was like, yeah, it was like a country music song. There was a song that I played in the car every time I got in the car that kind of reflected the whole thing. It was like my girlfriend left me and my dog died and one of my parents got sick. It was just like one of those quintessential everything went wrong. I lost the starting job and everything went wrong at the same time, and I just listened to this song on a loop to wallow in my misery. And we're like, what's the song? What's the song? And he's like, I can't think of the song. And so we had this great conference call with him at the end, and he was apologizing. Guys, I'm really sorry I can't think of this song. I know it'd be great. I know it'd be great for your stories. And we were like, that's all right. He gave us a lot of texture and everything. And so like 20 minutes later, the phone rings in the press room, and somebody hits the speaker button. He's like, guys, this is Jim Harbaugh. The name of the song is whatever. I wish I could remember the name of the song. It'd be a much better story. But like 20 minutes later, he went to the speakerphone at the Colts side, called the Raiders press to tell us he had thought of the name of the song, and just called it. Like the phone rang blindly. You usually get like an insurance call once in a while at random on that. And he told us the name of the song. He was like a hero to the Raiders press corps that was fighting for scraps or anything interesting. And we thought he was terrific. And I think of this story all the time because I think he's a huge ass now.
That's an
I
awesome
will
story.
say-
He should have just tweeted it though, you know. But it made
He
it
should
easier.
have.
Yeah. In
He,
1995, I don't know why he didn't just blast it out.
Yeah, step ahead of the curve there. I mean, the Jim Harbaugh press conference, Joe, still a very entertaining place to be. You never know quite what he's going to say. Sometimes it's about cutting the grass and eating McDonald's. It's a lot of different things that happen at those press conferences.
Well,
And
you know,
by the way,
the one thing about Jim Harbaugh too is, you know, the Superman story where putting on a pair of sunglasses to look like Clark Kent and disguise yourself is absolutely ridiculous, right? It's a suspend your disbelief thing. But I don't recognize the Jim Harbaugh I knew from the Jim Harbaugh now with the glasses. He actually pulls off the Clark Kent thing with the glasses. I think if people are saying that, having the Superman argument about how the Clark Kent disguise is not enough, I think Jim Harbaugh can be used as an example of a situation where it works.
He's the
That
evidence.
guy looks completely different in glasses.
and by the way, I'm right. That team they upset the Chargers and Chiefs on the road, and it was a Hail Mary at Pittsburgh by Harbaugh that just missed, or else we would have had a Cowboys Colts Super Bowl. He was inserted into the Craig Erickson was their starter, and then he took over. He was the backup and took over the starting job. How about
So
that?
the Colts would have been blown out instead. What a terrific story it would have
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
We'll have more with Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com coming up next. He'll join us for the entire 8 o'clock hour, getting into the Titans coaching search and all things Tennessee Titans as well. We'll take your thoughts as always, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
Stand back. There's a hurricane coming through.
We are joined for the next hour by Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com. Normally with us on Wednesday mornings from 8 to 9 o'clock. A little bit of a different schedule this week. PK with us all show long today for the rest of the 8 o'clock hour. Paul Kuharski, presented by Parman Energy and Edley's Barbecue. Visit parmanenergy.com, your one-stop petroleum solution. And Edley's Barbecue, a family-owned business that is local to Nashville. And PK, I know you are a big fan of Edley's Barbecue.
I'm thrilled to be brought to everybody by Edley's Barbecue. It's a locally owned and family-owned business serving up the best barbecue in Nashville. Make sure you check out Edley's Game Day Eats, available from now through the big game. Edley's will provide the good times and great food for you to enjoy on game day. Choose from ribs, wings, hot chicken salad, hot links. No matter the combination, you can't go wrong with Edley's on game day. Go check out Edley's at any of their convenient locations around town. They make the world a better place by making people happy, and you're going to be happy after you eat their food. Trust me on that one.
No question about that. So, PK, it's been a wide range search for the Titans when it comes to their head coaching vacancy. They've interviewed a lot of people to this point, and apparently more interviews coming today. As we sit here today, and there have been offensive gurus like Bobby Slowick, and we've talked about Thomas Brown this week. There have also been defensive coaches like Aaron Glenn connected to the Titans, Dan Quinn getting an interview from the Cowboys. What do you make of kind of the path that the Titans have taken, the wide blanket that they've kind of thrown over all this? What's your best read on the Titans coaching search and the process of how it's gone to this point?
Well, I'm a big fan of wide net search. First off, you allow yourself to be surprised by a candidate. That could be a little fearsome if you're a Titans fan. But the biggest thing is that you can get a lot of information from a lot of guys. What they would do with Will Levis, how they would defend the Titans as they're drawn up, where they see deficiencies, what they think they could turn into strengths, an evaluation of the roster. You talk to 10 guys, you get 10 valuable opinions on those things that help your general manager, your organization, and can be a resource for the one of the 10 that you do ultimately hire if you use that information properly and smartly, which I would hope that they do. So I have no problem with them talking to that number of guys. I think it's a smart approach. The one that we've heard that's coming back live is Brian Callahan. He's one of my two favorite candidates here, along with Ben Johnson from Detroit. I'm definitely on board with you need an offensive head coach here to generate better things on the side of the ball where they've really had a hard time outside of 2 good years with Arthur Smith, and to put yourself in a position where a defensive head coach isn't finding a good offensive coordinator and then having him poached every 2 years. If you can regenerate somebody good at that position, I'm sure that conversation's been held thoroughly on all the shows on the game. So that's a little dangerous. Dan Graziano, who I talked to at the last game, says, he gets the sense that Aaron Glenn's an early front runner. Aaron Glenn is a good coach with a good reputation. I wrote something yesterday with a quote from him that has a buzz sentence in it right there about collaboration and being able to talk to ownership, that you could plug right into probably the kind of things that the Titans want to hear. And somebody put up a big post about how if you hired Aaron Glenn, you're hiring Mike Vrabel. Well, you don't have to have a great statistical line for your unit in order to be a good coach coming in. I staunchly believe that Mike Vrabel for those first 4 years was an excellent coach. He didn't have a great statistical line as a defensive coordinator.
It was terrible
in his 1 year in Houston. You don't have direct control over the performance of your unit. And Aaron Glenn's Detroit Lions, the defense is a complementary piece of a very good team right now. That's a game away from going to the conference championship game, and other guys, Frank Smith, who's not on the list, was voted the best offensive coordinator in the league in that odd NFLPA. Aaron Glenn was too in the odd NFLPA survey. But Frank Smith's fingerprints aren't as much on Miami's offense with Mike McDaniel as the architect and the play caller as Aaron Glenn's fingerprints are on, the good things about Detroit's defense. So, and they bring in Thomas Brown, who's called plays at least the second half of the year for
a minute,
the worst offense in the league. But, he spent 3 years with McVay, and people who spent time with McVay have done very, very well. So it's not that simple. If it was that simple, you'd just go to the offensive coordinator of the best team in the league, best offense in the league, which is Frank Smith, or the defensive coordinator of the best defense in the league, which is Jim Schwartz. And Jim Schwartz hasn't gotten an interview from anybody.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I thought Jim Schwartz invented football. Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I think Aaron Glenn actually has done pretty well. They don't have a good defensive roster. They really don't. They have bad secondary. They don't have any interior difference makers. They have one good edge guy and, a couple other good pieces, but they're pretty
Simmons
limited.
Is an interior difference maker.
I'm talking about the Lions.
Oh, sorry.
I'm talking about the Lions. I think Aaron Glenn actually has done, and just like Vrabel was like 31st, and I think Watt, Clowney, and Merciless all got hurt that year, right? I think that's right. Yeah. So
you're saying he's doing good work with what he's got, and
I
look
think
at where they
is.
are. I mean, he's a respected piece of that staff for sure, and he was a good player. I mean, he's got a well-rounded resume.
Yeah, but there are obvious similarities of Vrabel. So I get people. I mean, look, I think it should be an offensive coach ideally. Let me ask you about Callahan. Is there any concern on your part because you still don't know what a play caller is until a play caller calls plays that he hasn't done that?
No, I mean, a lot of these offensive guys come in having, Matt LaFleur had 1 year play calling experience and it wasn't a good one. You got to jump off the diving board with some of these offensive guys. Most of them have come from the Shanahan McVay tree. And if you're coaching with Shanahan or McVay, you weren't calling plays for them. And the Shanahan McVay guys have all had success coming into the league. So, I trust them more than I trust a defensive guy who's got to hire a guy who's, also probably not going to have called plays. So what's the difference there? The non-play calling head coach has been closer to the process than the coordinator or defensive coach is going to have hired. And I don't know that any of these candidates have, extensive play calling experience. Ben Johnson is top of my list in part because of that, and I think he's the closest to an ideal candidate out there. I like Ben Johnson, and I like Brian Callahan as my top two here.
We'll have more on the Titans coaching search with Paul Kuharski coming up next. Take your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025, our phone number. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, brought to you by Chuck McDowell Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com with us, talking all things Tennessee Titans and the coaching search. PK, we've talked with you about Bobby Slowick and the conversation about him maybe not being ready for a head coaching job this cycle. And John McClain has talked about that as well on this station. Now, the Texans went out there last week and just absolutely punked the Cleveland Browns, and we'll see what they do against Baltimore in the divisional round this weekend. But it feels like from the outside looking in, there's a lot of momentum around Bobby Slowick right now, and the Titans completed an interview with him last night. So do you view the Slowick situation any differently? Do you think with the playoff performance that we've seen from the Texans to this point and all the conversation around him right now that he gets a head coaching job this cycle, or do you think he's still a year away?
Well, I think the resume is largely written. They had a great game in the first round of the playoffs. They could have a horrible game in the next round. So, Twitter went crazy with that one. Candidacy's super hot. If they get blown out this weekend and the offense is bad, does the public decide that candidacy, it is not ready off one game? I think that it's body of work in this circumstance. His body of work's been excellent. I don't think the question about his preparedness regards the X's and O's or the shaping of a young quarterback. I think it's about the other things, the CEO capabilities, the ability to be the front-facing guy for an organization, and all of those things, which are important as well. And if his new team gets shellacked week 1 or week 2, and he's got to handle press conference and ownership after that, is he equipped for that yet? And so he's got to decide, if he's ready for those sorts of things. People around him who've dealt with him regularly, like McClain, have questions about that, which lead me to have questions about that. So I think there are candidates who are more prepared for those sorts of things, who are equal or roughly equal to him in terms of X's and O's and ability to help develop a quarterback. Callahan, for instance, what he did with Jake Browning after Burrow went down, and his ability to present a CEO front, I think, is much better than Bobby Slowick at this point.
Well, that's where I was going to go. Like, what do we know about him being able to do that? But I've since this is all unfolded, I've listened to some interviews with Callahan, very impressive for sure. But there's still, even with that, right? Like, unless you're going to go hire one of these coaches who have done it as a head coach. I remember when Vrabel came in, not only were there questions about the defense having a terrible year in his 1 year as D coordinator, but also remember like his weird pressers early and stuff. And he was like, don't stand over there, stand here, and all this stuff. And it was like, can this dude handle all the crap that goes with being a head coach? And eventually,
really evolved on that front. What are you doing with your hands? Keep your hands.
he really grew into it.
Went full circle. Full circle.
Total 180.
The same thing about LaFleur. And I told my press friends about LaFleur. I think LaFleur is a great guy. I think it's probably early. And I think it was early for LaFleur. You'd be better, Robby, but like first year, LaFleur had the crutch of having, a very good team and a very good quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback. And, when you have those things in place, those legs of the table, you can get away with not being ready in other certain areas. Titans don't have those things. Most teams hiring don't have those things. Now, at a certain point, you take your leap of faith with your guy, and there's going to be learning on the job for any of these guys in certain departments. You have to pick your departments.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And then there's, the defensive side of things. They've interviewed Mike McDonald. We've talked about Aaron Glenn. Like Dan Quinn to me, PK, even before like the Packers Cowboys game last week, I don't think the Dan Quinn thing is a route the Titans should go. If it is a defensive coach that they end up with, number one, what do you think the reaction from Titans fans will be? And number two, what does that tell you about this coaching search? Because I think everybody that we've talked to agrees that offensive coach should be the way they go. If it is a defensive coach, what does that tell you about A.B. Adams-Strunk, Rand Carthon, and kind of the process to get to this point? What does it tell you about Will Levis?
I think if it's a defensive coach, it needs to be because they've lost out on three good offensive coaches and they think they're getting the best defensive coach. That would be a reasonable rationale. If they hire a defensive coach because they've been swept off their feet by a defensive coach, I think they're outsmarting themselves. And I think people will be pissed, and I think people will rightly be pissed. This team needs to take a turn towards offensive football. That said, what they'll come back with, if they're smart, is, Brian Billick was an offensive coach and it wound up with the defensive football team and other examples like that. But those are exceptions, not the rule. I think, it's not just about Levis's development. Willis's development is not going to take off no matter who the head coach is, I don't think. It's about a philosophical change and a directional change and a determination to score more than 17 points a game. And your best chance to do that is with the captain of the ship who comes from that side of the ball. And I hope they're not looking back and saying, well, Munchak was on the offensive side of the ball and Wisenhunt was on the offensive side of the ball and Malarkey was on the offensive side of the ball. Only Vrabel has been on the defensive side of the ball. You're going too far back there. Things have changed very rapidly in the NFL. And only really Malarkey and Vrabel have overlapped with this age, I think, of offensive football, offensive thinking, and the McVay Shanahan era, if you will.
Well, and that's the thing to me, PK, and that's where I'm not as high. I think Ben Johnson's been a fantastic OC, but I think specifically Shanahan, McVay, descendants are of interest, and also in part because of Levis's experience in that offense. Now, Callahan technically, Callahan was not with those guys, but of course, he's with Zach Taylor, so he's a branch off the Zach Taylor. But I guess you would still consider him. It's still the same offense, right?
Right.
Like that's why
he was with Peyton. He was with Peyton, which tells you something about his knowledge of the intricacies of protection, which has super importance to this team, because you don't work with Peyton Manning and without an understanding of every intricacy of protection.
Yeah, like I think he's impressive. I think at least the fact that he's with Zach Taylor, I just, that to me is a box that I also think should be checked. Until we start seeing Shanahan McVay disciples flop miserably, and maybe it'll happen at some point. That stuff seems to be working pretty well, man. And that's, again, I think Thomas Brown should get more respect as a candidate than he has. Although I do agree with your guy Stilly on, like, I still want to see demonstrated success. Like when Thomas Brown was mentioned, a lot of the reaction was, "Oh my God, what? The Panthers suck." But like, you have to look at the circumstances of that. What Tepper tried to do, and Reich, it was a mess.
I think Thomas Brown probably needs to rehabilitate himself with a season of something.
Yeah, that's fair.
Before he's prime. But I mean, these guys are largely not disciples of Shanahan and McVay, this list. But neither was Kevin Stefanski, right? And he's had pretty good success. I had another example there, but
and Frank Smith is, and he's getting no looks, which is really interesting. Not much.
Yeah, Sirianni wasn't either. Not that he's a great example now, but he had great success early, and he didn't come out of that either. So there are offensive coaches to be found who haven't touched the hem of the garment. Though I'm with you, I'd prefer that they have.
Coming up next, we'll ask the question to PK that we began the show with this morning. Do the Titans have a reputation problem? We'll get into that next with Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Paul Kuharski with us from paulkuharski.com. Presented by Parman Energy and Edley's Barbecue. Visit parmanenergy.com, your one-stop petroleum solution. And Edley's Barbecue, PK, voted Nashville's best barbecue for 2023.
Brought to you by Edley's Barbecue. Edley's is a local family-owned business and was voted the best barbecue in Nashville, as you say, for the second year in a row in 2023, which makes sense because their food is spectacular and their service is second to none. Their goal is to make the world a better place by making people happy, and they're certainly doing just that. I leave happy every time I eat at Edley's. Go support Nashville's best barbecue at one of Edley's convenient locations, or get Edley's catered for your next event. You can't go wrong with Edley's. Go check them out. Every time I talk about them, I wind up craving delicious barbecue.
So, PK, we had Charles Robinson on the show yesterday, and they were doing a poll at Yahoo Sports, and he talked to coaches around the league, executives, and basically had them rank the 7 job openings on a point system. And a long story short, the Titans finished 6th. They had a couple of votes for 6th place, 1 vote for 7th place, even behind the Carolina Panthers. Mike Sando at The Athletic did a similar thing where the Titans do not receive good marks with their opening as well. And one of the things that Charles Robinson brought up with us was that people around the league that he's talked to have a problem with the way that the Mike Vrabel situation went down, how it was handled by ownership, and kind of the black mark that's left on the Titans with their organization. So as you sit here and we've talked about, the Titans' job and where it ranks in terms of the openings right now, do you believe the Titans have a reputation problem with ownership, with the way that the Vrabel / John Robinson situation was handled? How do you feel like this organization right now is currently viewed around the league?
I tend to think this stuff gets overblown. I think they have a couple things going against them that they didn't used to have going against them. CJ Stroud, the Colts getting their footing. It's not a pushover division the way it was. That's a big one. Look, I think that other stuff is the reason you interview, right? You come in and they ask you if you have any questions, and you say, well, word about town in the coaching business is that the Vrabel stuff was pretty ugly at the end. What happened? And you hear the Titans side of things, and then it puts you at ease or it doesn't. But I don't think you don't take a job with the Tennessee Titans because of what you heard about how the Titans operate until you've talked to people. You're going to have friends in the coaching business probably who were on that staff or are friends with somebody that are on that staff that give you that side of the story. And the Titans are going to push you to talk to Carthon's friends, and he's pretty popular to hear them tell it in the scouting network, and they're going to push you to talk to those people. So they have repair to do and they have questions to answer, but I don't think they're unanswerable in the way that things in Carolina are hard to answer for, or things in Washington during Dan Snyder's time were unanswerable. And I think Joe and I have both had conversations with people in the building where they have their side of the story, which is not unreasonable or hard to believe reply to a lot of these questions. It's one of 8 open jobs. It's one of 32 jobs in the league. I do believe Amy lets people work once they're hired. You're going to have to buy into this collaborative, hocus pocus is strong, but this mantra that they've got now, if you buy into that, I don't think it's a bad place to work. Mike Sando, completely ignored Will Levis in his write-up, so he's not a Will Levis believer. Anybody that's coming here is going to have some degree of belief in Will Levis.
Well, and that's the other part of this, is that's a huge thing, right? I'm with you for the most part on what you said about ownership there, PK. I would be interested to hear how Amy Evstroik would answer that question, because it's not just what you heard. I mean, as you're a coach, you're looking at the Titans, you're paying attention. You're like, my goodness, total commitment to two people, less than 2 years ago, a significant investment commitment. Now they're both gone. What does that mean? Right.
Yeah.
But to your point, Daniel Snyder and David Tepper have also still been able to hire people too. I mean, you're gonna hire someone. The Texans were the biggest bleep show in the league, and look at them now. So
I think people that get to the point, Joe, where they say like this is a hold your nose job, like those jobs, and turn away. I mean,
it's just a matter of you might lose your candidate to another one in this cycle, right? And that might be a tiebreaker in theory, potentially. But the Levis thing, I agree. I mean, Sando. Well, I made a joke on the show because we've had Sando on before talking about Tannehill. It's like Sando's just like, whoever the Titans quarterback is, Sando hates the Titans quarterback, man. I don't know. But that was a total dismissal from him. I will say, guys, that look, all these people going through this process with the Titans, they were all talking about Will Levis last draft season with people, right? And we know everybody passed on him. So I do wonder how much skepticism there is among various candidates about him.
Well, you sound a little like Stilly there. Like if you didn't take him in the first round, you can't believe in him at all.
You listen to Stilly a lot, by the way. It's an interesting thing about you. Go ahead.
That was the second time, and the rant that I had to fill in for you on short notice, and now
second time,
and comparing you in a negative way, which is the only way. The idea that if he's not drafted in the first round, everybody hated him. I mean, people could have liked him a lot and just liked somebody else better or not needed a quarterback, So look, the person that comes in is going to have said good things about Will Levis. Now, that's the other thing. The Titans have to have their BS detector up, and they can't hire a guy who fake likes Will Levis. They have to hire a guy who actually likes Will Levis or sees promise in Will Levis and
can speak specifically to how he can be maximized.
Absolutely. You don't want to hire a guy that's saying nice things about Will Levis in order to get the job, but actually thinking a year from now, after this kid has a crappy year, I'll be able to get out from under him. You're ripe for disaster if you wind up with that. And look, we've been around Will Levis. I just think it's hard not to see some qualities there that you think you can do some things with. He's not CJ Stroud. I don't think anybody's pretending that he's CJ Stroud, but he's got some bounce. He's got an arm. He's got some intelligence. There are things to work with there that are better than, a decent share of teams in the league have to work with right now.
Bottom line on the Titans reputation discussion for me is if you're a team out there, like there's so many candidates, and I think good quality candidates right now that yes, it's on the Titans to hire the right person. I also think there's some good options available to them. And I think the Texans example is a great example, right? I mean, you had the whole Deshaun Watson fiasco, the McNair family and all that stuff. It was Jackie Easterby down there. I mean, it was a disaster. And then all of a sudden, with two moves, hiring DeMeco Ryans and drafting CJ Stroud, it's totally transformed their franchise. So, like, I don't know that I would describe the Houston Texans as a well-run team, but they've made the right decisions, and now their trajectory looks better than anybody else in the AFC South. So, like, even if you're a Titans fan that doesn't have a ton of confidence either in Amy Adams-Strunk or in Rand Carthon, if they make the right decision with the coach, that can change a lot of things moving forward here.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. That's a really good point, Robbie. And here's the other thing. I think a lot of people, particularly nationally, look at it and say, like, this guy's going to hire and this team's going to disappear into the background like it always does. If I'm the right kind of coach, I look at that and say, great, I'm going to get hired. And then Rand Carthon and I are going to go back into the background and go to work. And the spotlight on us is going to be minimal. And we're going to be able to get bleep done. And that's a different thing than Philly or Green Bay or Buffalo or wherever. And there's a certain certain kind of guy that can find the good in that, as opposed to being swarmed at the combine. Um, and there's certain benefits to being a small market team. I know Titans fans don't like it because they feel like they don't get their due when things are good, but it also leads to some privacy, if you will, when you're bad and reconstructing, where you can do so without a giant spotlight on you, which probably is beneficial to getting the real work done.
Still have to be needled by you daily, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. So, Amy Adams, huh?
We'll see about daily.
Amy Adams Strunk told us that she's going to tell us when this is done how the setup is going to be. So, what is that going to be, PK? Obviously, they don't want anybody who's like has earned control. But what are we going to hear, whoever they hire, about the setup and who has final say in personnel?
Well, I don't see how a new coach that ran Carthon as part of hiring is going to come out of this with power over the 53.
So will they tell us that?
Man,
will she actually follow through and tell us that?
She said I mean, if she doesn't tell us that, her stock, which is down right now, continues to go down. And the one thing she's had going for her throughout her term as the controlling owner of this team is that she signs autographs and shakes hands and judges chili cook-offs and has a relatability with the fans. And if she doesn't deliver on what she said she would tell the fans, she's going to take a big dent with the fans. Her Q rating is down, as bad as it's been with the fan base. She's got to produce on the deliverables. Don't you think?
Oh yeah. I don't think there's any question about that. We'll have more with Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final segment of the day, Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com with us talking all things Tennessee Titans. Joe, you've got a question for PK from our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com.
Yeah, Caleb, it's an interesting question. Can you guys discuss the possibility of the new coach not wanting Levis, wanting to draft a QB at 7? Is that an automatic disqualifier, PK? Or is it possible a coach could come in and talk them into like, hey, we just need to get Jaden Daniels. Here's my vision, and we can win a Super Bowl in 3 years?
Yeah, I don't think they'll do that. I think they just look. Talking them out of Levis is a project A. Talking them into spending more draft capital on a quarterback is another project. I mean,
Yes.
You traded up in the 3rd for Willis, which was a mistake. You traded up in the 2nd, and now you'd spend your biggest draft capital. So you don't have a 3rd this year because of the Levis trade. So you're going to spend your 1st on Daniels, which denies you a left tackle, which then pushes you into the 2nd. You don't have a 3rd. Where are you getting the cornerback? Where are you getting the wide receiver? It just clutters things up. I think you got to try it all out with Levis and get those other pieces. If it doesn't work with Levis in a year or two, then you worry about it then. But you got to rebuild the roster. And if you keep drafting quarterbacks, you're not drafting things that help the rest of the team, including the quarterback.
I think it would be a different discussion if they were picking number 1 and number 2 overall, and you had your pick at the litter of a Drake May or a Caleb Williams or whatever. But I also, like, if you're that's what makes the Sando part of this interesting, because even Charles Robinson with us yesterday was talking about it. Like, there's a lot of people that aren't sold on Levis or don't like Levis. And I'm not saying that anybody should be sold that Levis is definitely the franchise quarterback, because I don't think we've seen enough from him yet to definitively say that. But like, I have to think, and this is where maybe it comes back to people just don't watch the Titans a whole lot. I think there's a lot of box score scouting. And like watching him play, I don't know how you couldn't come away from watching Will Levis play this year and not at least be encouraged that there could be a chance that he might be that guy. I mean, some guys you watch play and you're like, oh man, you made a bad pick. Like Levis, there are a lot of different moments this year, PK, where I think it's very encouraging for Titans fans moving forward here, especially given what he was working with.
And you can't continue to forestall left tackle. You can't. For whoever's at quarterback, whenever. I mean, if you did this guy's plan and drafted Daniels, then Daniels would be under constant attack from his left.
Yeah, look, what you said, Robby, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. I truly believe that any candidate who's talking to the Titans and is seriously considering the Titans is going to do the homework and look at Levis, because why would they have looked at him anyway until then, right? And is going to say, oh, okay. I mean, I don't know if Will Levis is going to work out, but there's more than enough on film to suggest to you that you've got a pretty promising piece of clay there, I think. So I think that some of this stuff, like, for example, Sando and Charles, both of them in their reporting, talking to people, I think as people investigate, they're going to feel a little bit better about them. But maybe I'm wrong. Coy and Clarksville, this is an interesting one. I think Zach Pillar, did he say this on Chasing Big Joe? Or did he tweet it?
Said it elsewhere.
Munchak? Okay. All right. Well, wherever he said it, apparently Munchak is all in on coaching. Have you talked to Munchak? Is he ready? Is he ready once they call the bat phone? He's just going to come be the O-line coach or whoever gets the head coaching job?
This is true. I have talked to Munchak, and I'm pissed at Pillar for saying it. Now, he was ready.
We'll give you the scoop. You got the scoop on our show.
He was ready to take a call from Vrabel if Vrabel had an opening. And he is ready to coach given the right situation. He lives in Denver currently. But, he doesn't know who's getting this job, obviously. So he could have, a problem with whoever gets the job. But provided that, he's neutral or has good feelings about the guy, he'll answer the phone, and he's got no beef with current. Set off your news sounder because this goes further than Pillar. He's got no beef with Titans ownership currently. His beef with previous ownership, and he would come back in that role despite having been dismissed as head coach here.
So you mean Tommy?
Yeah, this beef is with Tommy, not with Amy.
Well, whoever the coach would be, I think would be wise to make a phone call if that's the case. PK, who you got on divisional weekend?
Damn Pillar. I was sitting on that.
Why are you burying the lead, PK? Don't bury the lead on our show.
Well, I'm burying the lead for paulkuharski.com, which I was sitting on, but the Pillar's got a big mouth. Pillar's got a big everything, by the way. That sounds.
You got the camera. You got the camera in the locker room.
That sounded horrific. Horrific. Who do I have in these games? Remind me who's playing.
You got Packers,
we can
Niners,
just end the show now.
Texans, Browns, Bills, Chiefs, and then Bucks, Lions.
You just said Texans, Browns. The Texans.
Excuse
Browns.
me, Texans, Ravens. Sorry.
The Ravens are going to win, unfortunately. Give me game by game quickly.
Texans, Ravens. You got the Ravens. Packers, 49ers.
49ers.
Bucks, Lions.
Lions.
Bills, Chiefs.
Bills. Is that
boy.
chalk or are the Chiefs favored?
Bills are favored by 2.5.
Yeah. So chalk
Rexrode.
across the board. I look forward to the Chiefs losing. I'm sick of the Chiefs. Don't block the box and be sure to lock your locks and read about Munchak in 10 minutes at my site.
That's
And he'll rank Zach Pillar's body parts too.
That does it for us today.
He's a very large man, is all
We'll
I
be
mean.
back 6 a.m. on Monday. Jason Big Joe up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.